I'm just going to say a few words because the real purpose today is to hear from as many of you as possible on as many of the ideas as possible. But I'd just like to be sure that this is an informal discussion. It's not supposed to be an end in itself. It's a brainstorming session. But let's start with the overall issue that we're trying to address, and then come down to the specifics. If I had to summarize it in one sentence, I'd ask the question, is there any solution to the pressing challenges confronting humanity today? There may be, we may all agree that there is possible solutions to one or another of them, but often those solutions seem to be in contradiction to one another. We think we could control global warming if we stopped economic growth, but that would certainly end up with a ballooning problem of unemployment and social unrest in the process. So that's an example of the complex interlinkages which Ivo mentioned in the beginning. So the question is, many groups, many fine organizations have been looking at parts of the puzzle: financial crisis, economy, not too many unemployment, the ecology certainly, issues of security, disarmament, global governance. The question is, can they all go together? Our purpose in framing the question this way is not because we're gluttons for punishment and we think we want to take on a problem that's greater than anybody else has taken on. Rather the opposite. I think the more we thought about it, discussed it in our earlier meeting, the more it became clear that unless we look at the totality of the issues, and unless we work on the totality of the issues, it may be that we don't arrive at effective solutions for any of the issues. So it's not so much because of a greater ambition, it's because we feel the interconnectedness of the issues requires a more comprehensive approach than at least most people are taking. And anyone who knows about other work that approximates the scope of what we're discussing, we would like to know about it and learn as much as we can from them, and in an appropriate way involve them also, because this is a crucial endeavor. A second key point is that I think most of the efforts to address these issues are trying to address them within the present parameters, or let's say within the present paradigm. And I think it's pretty clear from our earlier discussions on new economy and employment, on cooperative security, that that's not going to happen. That unless we're willing to move beyond the present paradigm, I like to think of it as unless we're willing to move the goalposts and redefine the playing field and challenge some things that are really considered accepted conventional wisdom that can't be challenged. Challenging some conceptions even about the basis of social science and the validity of our scientific concepts, social scientific concepts, especially those related to economics. Let's challenge how we're working with. And the initiative that Rome has been looking at, the need for a change in values. I mention this to emphasize this because this is a line that Nelson has been working on, and we'll hear from him in a few minutes. And we have circulated his article that goes into it more. Ruben also has his own working group that's going to be meeting in Bucharest in a couple of months, and I hope, Ruben, you'll also tell us a little about that during your presentation, and where you see that going, so we can learn as much as we can from other initiatives that are underway. This discussion actually started in a preliminary way a year and a half ago at a meeting in Dubrovnik to celebrate Ivo's 80th birthday. It was originated with an idea he gave to the Academy's strategic plan back in 2009, now coming to fruition. We took it up at the meeting in Trieste in March, where we were trying to look at many of these pieces, but not all, particularly the pieces related to economy, employment, ecology, and social welfare. We just came from a meeting in Zagreb and Split, which I hope Ivo will speak more about later on the security and governance issues. So the Academy has itself been looking at all of these pieces pretty much separately. And now we want to see what happens when we put them together. This is a learning experience, or we might say this is an experiment, to be frank. And the conference in Geneva is going to be a big experiment because more than half the people in the room have not been part of our discussion at all, even the speakers. So we don't really know what we're going to learn. We don't even know what they're going to say. We don't know how far they'll be oriented towards it, but that's a lesson and an education for us. We'll have a greater opportunity in Alexandria to sit down with a smaller group of about 20 people, 15 of whom are fellows who have been more or less part of this discussion, and work for a longer period of time on thinking how we go about this and trying to identify some of the pieces of the puzzle. And that's eventually our effort is obviously going to have not just cover many dimensions, but it's going to have to go from an analysis of present limitations to identification of principles, ideas, values, strategies, policies, and institutions that could address these issues. I think at this point, let us not be too particular or too systematic. I'd like to invite you all to speak out any ideas you have that could form part of a new paradigm, or in the absence of solutions, any issue that you think is particularly critical that a new paradigm would have to address. In planning for this, and in interacting with Mila on it, we felt there's a lot we can learn from past crises. Crises are not only sources of problems, but most of the great progress humanity has made is also made through crises. I requested Mila to reflect back on some of the past crises and some of the lessons that she thinks we might draw from those experiences that may help us in formulating an approach to what we're going to do in the future.